Welcome, y'all! All right. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor Racing Podcast for Thursday, August 6th. I wrote August 8th. What am I doing? August 6th, 2015. I am Tailgate Mayor Rusty Wallace, and as always, I'm here with Pregame Engineer Andrew Sherwin. What's happening, buddy?
You know what? I still haven't figured out how I want to respond to you when you asked me that question. So what I'll say is not the same thing I said last week about Thursday being one day away from Friday, but man, I'm just glad it's almost Friday.
I hear you, man. So I didn't even know, and you were texting with me. I didn't even know if this podcast was going to happen. I am, as the Buffalo Bills in the late 90s, I am 0 for 4 on-time departures from the Baltimore International Airport. I was up in D.C. all this week, flew out of Baltimore, and as usual, had another flight delay. So, yeah, I'm back in the saddle, and I'm finally made it back home, and we're here doing the PETM.
Yeah, well, we had some biblical weather right about the time your plane got delayed, but then the storm that was supposed to be bad just kind of dissipated.
Yeah, they were telling me, or they were saying that they had put a ground stop in Atlanta or something like that, and it was like, all right, here we go again, fourth time. I knew what to expect anyway. So, whatever, I'm here now. What you drinking?
Well, I've got wild turkey this week.
Ooh, hello, just the turkey.
Wild turkey, a splash of organic lime juice, and diet tonic water.
Oh, that sounds pretty tasty. Is that the 101, or should I even ask that?
You shouldn't ask that.
Okay, so
of course it is.
Of course, it's the 101. I have ventured over into your sort of category, Jim Beam, right here. My problem is our pre-show was so long with us just farting around that now I've only got about a third of it left. So Jim Beam.
Well, I don't know if you. Oh, sorry, I cut you off.
No, it's cool. And
I don't know if you knew this or not, but in this new world that we live in, where in the United States every day has some thing attached to it. It's the national day of something every day of the week. Well, today just happens to be IPA day.
Oh man, I missed it.
So I'm having on deck. I've got a DEPA from a local brewery called Monday Night Brewing, double IPA. That looks
great.
Fantastic.
Blind Pirate. I like it.
Yep, it fits right in with their naming has a pattern. You know, the eye patch is the regular IPA, so the Blind Pirate. He's not only does he have an eye patch, but he's got a headband covering up his other eye too. So he's definitely blind.
Well, that's cool, and something I need to learn is having something on deck, because I come up here with a full drink ready to go, and then, like I said, we mess around for a little while, and now I almost need another drink. And we've got another 35 minutes of podcasting to do. Maybe I'll sit here and make you do a solo for a little while I go refill. That'll be funny.
Oh, you should. You should. I'm sure the fans will love that. I'll just be like, I don't even know what to say. We'll see. Maybe I can, while we're talking, I'll think of a monologue in the back of my head.
Yeah. And I won't even know what it is till I hear the podcast later. So you can even make fun of me.
It'll be a surprise. I might talk about something like, who knows, UFC or soccer. Or
yeah.
Piss all our fans off.
That's right. That's right. So we've got a shout out today, and I've got since we have the mixer, man, I went ahead and got us another soundbite, which I keep calling out the sound bites because I'm happy about them. So maybe eventually we'll be a little more seamless with it, and we'll just say, all right into the shout outs, and I'll play it. But for now, I'm telling everybody, here comes the cool soundbite. Listen to what I've done. So, but here it is. We have our shout outs for today. Oh man, and it didn't even work because I've got the thing turned down. All of that. All right, seriously, this time. There we go. Our shout-outs for today. My shout-out this time actually goes to my own dad. My dad, Patrick Wallace Sr. I am Patrick Wallace Jr., but I go by Rusty and Ricky and all kinds of other names. But today, on the day, is his 60th birthday. So he made it to 60. Real proud of him, real happy. And I shouldn't say made it to 60, like that's some special thing, but you start hearing all these people who are, that we lose, and you think, man, I can't believe my dad's in that sort of age, and I mean, he's doing great. So good to see him doing great, and he's got a bunch more left in him. So happy birthday to my dad. No telling if he's going to listen to this, but I'm still proud to call him dad and shout him out on the PETM podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome. Happy birthday, Pat Sr. 60 is an accomplishment for sure. My dad lost his dad when his dad was 60, so it's cherishable time for sure.
So that brings us to our mistakes from last week, and let's see if I can get this one right. There it is.
Yeah, I think you got it right.
All right, finally, I'm figuring this thing out. This whole multitasking deal, trying to talk while moving knobs around and everything. I'm gonna have to get used to it, but hey, that one was pretty seamless. So anyway, so last time, this is 2 weeks in a row, man. We've had. I'm not gonna say we had huge sound issues last week, but I don't think we exactly got the levels correct. Luckily, you had given the warning out to the users. Man, am I a software guy or what? Out to the listeners.
Hey, I said viewers last week, so whatever.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, we're viewing each other here. We're the only two viewers. But out to the listeners, you had given them fair warning that please bear with us while we're trying to figure this stuff out. I was all confident because hey, I had the mixer. I'm ready to roll. But you sort of hit the brakes on that a little bit for me. So appreciate that. We had a little bit of sound problem. I think it fixed itself by the first couple minutes, but hopefully this one's our seamless one here.
Oh, hopefully. So I'll just go ahead with the one that I remember for me. So excited about the start of the NFL season that I said that the Hard Knocks HBO documentary series kicked off on Tuesday of this week. Dead wrong. It's actually Monday of next week. So
okay.
Y'all tune in next Monday night on HBO, and you'll get to see a very inside look at the Houston Texans. Quick little bit about them. They may have lost their running back for the first couple of months of the season with a surgery-required groin injury.
Well, then. Well, looking forward to that. I'm gonna have to watch it at your house. No, I've got somebody else's HBO.
Oh yeah, you
HBO
can sign into mine if you need to.
Yeah. So, looking forward to it. So, something that you brought up with me. You had sent me. I didn't get a chance to watch a truck race last week, but you had sent me a video on your phone, and I've since moved it over to the computer here so I can play it through the magical mixer again. But we had probably definitely one of the top 3 commands to start engines for the truck race that I've ever heard. And perhaps I'm going to call it number 1. And here's why I'm going to call it number 1. And we'll leave the viewers, the users, the listeners waiting for a moment while I break this one down. A few podcasts ago, you and I talked about what we would do when we got up there. And I believe I said I would get myself a little bit sideways. I would get up there and I would make sure that I couldn't talk for a few minutes after that. I was just going to absolutely belt it out. And I believe this guy did it to a T. So he did exactly what I would do. I would call this my number 1. What do you think?
It's number 1 in its simplicity, that it is just a guy excited to start the race. He took the honor of getting to do it as seriously as both of us would have taken it, and he just laid it down.
He delivered.
It's top 10 that I've ever heard. That's not a good. It's definitely number 1.
Number
That's
1.
the best call to fire I have ever heard.
Yeah, and it takes a few listens before the first time you kind of laugh, the second time you go, man, that guy did it. After that, you're just going, this is the best one I ever heard. So I actually called Pocono Raceway and tried to find out who the guy was, and they did not. They weren't able to give me the information. I emailed them, called them, and stuff. They were busy and all that, but I wanted to get him on the PETM podcast just to talk to them. Wasn't able to do that. Hey, maybe they'll respond later on. But until then, here it is. Let me make sure I got my levels correct here so that everybody can hear it. This is the call to start engines during the truck race. Here we go.
Driver, start your engine!
Man.
Perfect.
Perfect is right.
Perfect.
Perfect is right. So, like you said, it was short, sweet. He did it exactly the way that we've talked about we would do it. I was just beside myself listening to that. I've listened to it, I don't want to exaggerate, but 25 times.
Well, while I was trying to record that for you, I probably watched it 15 times.
Yeah. So, since once again I can start playing stuff through here, I figured while we're talking about top commands to start engines, I think bumped down to the number 2 spot now is one that we talked about on a previous podcast, which is the Adam Sandler, Kevin James call to fire during the 2010. I can't believe it was 5 years ago, but 2010, hell of a good 400. And so I figured I'd play that one. You ready to hear this?
Yeah, you should definitely play that one.
And so the one caveat I would get with this, guys, is you have to look up. So all I looked up was Adam Sandler, Kevin James, NASCAR, and it was the very first one. So if you're listening, you got to go on YouTube and watch this. Half of this is the visual. They are dancing around. They're going nuts. But here you go. This is Kevin James and Adam Sandler giving the command to start that we've talked about before.
Thank you.
This one. Come on,
this is for
Sam.
the troops overseas. Gentlemen,
A solid number 2 at this point. I mean, you can't argue with that.
Well, the thing is, the thing you have to understand is, so the reason why they're both so good is that the passion level is they're at the same level.
Yeah, you're right.
Both calls to fire are at 11. They're there. The difference between the two is you have two guys who have built careers on being physical comics. And so that's why you need to go YouTube the video of Adam Sandler and Kevin James, because that's half of why it's so funny to us, is because we can see him dancing around and act like fools. Kevin James damn near trips over the microphone cord. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Once again, the half of that is the visuals. So do yourself a favor and go look that one up. That was maybe more a preview than anything. So that's it. I'm looking forward to whoever's going to unseat those two and take over the crown, because it's got to be something good, and it might be us. Who knows?
Powerhouse.
Yeah.
Powerhouse. When the PETM podcast gets invited to do the call to fire at a local K&N race, we're going to kill it.
Oh, yeah. Somebody better be taking video, because we'll play that on repeat for an entire podcast, I think. Maybe even in the background, just for good measure. It might be distracting, though.
Yeah.
So we decided to do this podcast. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say we decided. We typically do this on Thursdays at 9 p.m. We had the little scare there with me having the little delay from Baltimore Airport, but I made it back just fine. But we had this one in particular right over the top of the first GOP debate. So here at the PETM podcast, we promise to never get political with y'all, but we figure we might have a little fun. So
exactly. You might as well have fun with it, because that's the number one thing on television tonight, I guarantee you.
Absolutely. With the PETM live cast coming in second, of course. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. We got 10 goobers up there trying to tell everybody how much the other 9 guys suck. So that's
and how much the current administration sucks, and don't forget about that too. So, in PETM fashion, the one thing that we're good at is picks. Well, I shouldn't say that we're good at. Something that we're consistent with is picking people. So, Sherwin, I'm going to let you start us off. Give us your pick for the GOP debate.
Well, I think regardless of what he says, I think the guy that's going to win the night is Donald Trump because he's got the I don't give a poop attitude, so he's likely to say something that's going to get everybody fired up.
That is a firm, solid pick. Obviously the favorite in this race right here, especially right now. I think it's a great pick, actually. One thing with Donald Trump you don't have to worry about, he's already rich. So
Self-funded.
Yeah. So, well, one thing being self-funded, so he doesn't have to have any people donating or any nefarious money coming to him that he doesn't already have. But he's not necessarily getting bought either. So, that's the you and I, as we've talked about before, both consume the Bill Burr podcast, and one of his strong points that he likes to laugh at is how the President of the United States does not make, in the grand scheme of things, all that much money, $400,000 a year. So easy to buy him out. But you know what? Donald Trump, he's not in this for the money. So I think that's a very solid pick there.
I think it's also, and I'm going to stop you before you pick your pick. It's also evidence, if we're actually going to get into political commentary here for a quick second, it's proof, solid proof that the two-party system is a broken system, because if a self-funded man can't run on an independent ticket, who can?
That's a good question, and I don't intend to answer while I'm sitting here drinking the delicious Jim Beam. And I already did kind of celebrate IPA Day. I had a IPA earlier. It was a local Cherry Street, and I don't know that brewery very well, but they have a session IPA that was pretty decent. So had one of those earlier. But that means I'm just stalling for my pick for the GOP debate. I'm going to go with the long shot here with former, or is he still, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, the big man.
Oh, have a donut.
Yes, sir. So I'm going with him because maybe I don't know much about this whole debate deal anyway. So he speaks his mind. I think he's going to connect with the folks and maybe pull out the dark horse win here. So I don't know how we're going to analyze this later on for who actually, who actually won the pick. But that's our picks, and we're sticking to them. And if any of you are taking anything we're saying seriously about politics, then turn off the PETM right now, or actually fast forward a couple minutes, because then we'll be done.
Right. Well, come, I guess, when would the next serious debates be? I guess the ones that really count will probably be this time next year, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
By then we'll have about 60 podcasts under our belt, and we'll have a serious drinking game, and we may actually do a live podcast while some of this crap's going on.
Oh man, that's a level of podcasting, to your point, that we're not there yet. In terms of multitasking in that way. I can't even hardly move these knobs around and play music for everybody, but I think that's an absolutely great idea.
Well, my inspiration for that kind of thing is certainly driven from, and I'll continue to shout him out because I think he's the master, Joe Rogan and his Fight Companion podcast he does, where he and his two buddies, Brian Callen and Brendan Schaub, sit around and they'll watch the UFC fights that Joe doesn't actually have the mic for, and they'll just react to what they're watching on television.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good. I think, do they call that the Fight Companion? Is that podcast?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I've seen that happen a few times. I need to watch, or I need to listen to those, because I see those come up on Rogan's, and I think that would be, now that you describe it, I think it'd be pretty fun to watch. I didn't know. So while we're on that track, let's talk about, we try to bring all this stuff back to racing somehow. I don't know how we're going to do it. We did it with GOP debate by doing our picks. I don't know how we'll bring this one back, but I think when a legend of a sport makes waves, we need to address that on this podcast, just because you and I just consume all types of sports. And this past weekend had Ronda Rousey once again just completely dominate a very deserving in terms of being there in that fight. She deserved to be there, and she was a solid opponent on paper. And then here we are 34 seconds later, and she is knocked out, just eating mat with her, what were we listening to? It might have been I think it was Burr again. We talk about him a lot, but talking about how they had the classic knockout, like face down, butt kind of sticking up, just completely out. And that was actually Nia, Bill Burr's wife, who's apparently all in on UFC, especially the women and Ronda Rousey. But yeah, and the cool thing about this is this represents sort of a change in pace for Ronda in terms of how she stopped a fight. We looked at her as a jiu-jitsu submission artist and a judo throw artist. Obviously, she was an Olympian in judo, won a bronze medal. She's got like 10 wins by armbar.
10 wins by armbar.
I made that number up.
Strikeforce and ECW and UFC and whatever. But the thing is, she just punched Betch Correa's lights out. She just punched her out. I mean, just punched her out. Just put her to sleep.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think about the people complaining about they paid all this money to see 34 seconds?
How many times did they pay that much money to watch Mike Tyson knock somebody out in less than a minute?
Good question. Probably the people who are watching this weren't old enough for that, but
and that's a good point because you and I are both in our early to mid 30s. So we were kids when Mike Tyson was doing his damage. There's a great documentary I challenge everyone to watch that's ever had any interest in strike sports. He went through a stretch where I think he ended 5 fights in the first round.
Wow.
As an 18 or 19-year-old heavyweight.
We're talking about 2-minute rounds, too, in boxing.
Yeah. I mean, just
with big gloves on.
Yeah, and nobody knew who he was. I mean, he went to the Olympics when he was 15 years old. He and Holyfield were there at the same time. He didn't do that well in the Olympics. Holyfield, I think, won a medal, maybe a silver. But I mean, Tyson was knocking guys out ice cold inside a minute when he was 19 years old.
Yeah. And so we're seeing that same thing right now in terms of just total domination. And so what I would say to anybody complaining about that is, hey, you paid to see 34 seconds of the best fighter probably on earth right now in terms of that person versus all the rest of the field. One thing that I was listening to the Ari Shaffir podcast, another one of the comedians out of New York, and he continues to say, I'm just not impressed with women's UFC until there's somebody who can fight Ronda Rousey and give her, because otherwise there's one person in his mind, there's one person who actually knows how to fight in the women's side of the sport. And I thought that was cruel but interesting.
I don't think and this is where I really take Ari's commentary with a grain of salt. I think on a lot of levels he's right. I think he's trying to make a point that will drive some listenership for him. But
sure,
people will listen whether they dislike or like. But I would wonder how many eras of sports heroes started this way, where people are like, "Well, this is the only person that's any good at this," and then you look back 20 years later and you go, "No, they were just real good."
Yeah. And maybe the genesis of a whole generation of people doing that. Think of like Tiger Woods. He outdrove everybody by 20, 30 yards when he was starting up. But that became a whole new era of all these guys coming up now. And I think Serena Williams was one, although she's still just dominating. So, and there's a lot like that in the sport. So let's say this. All of the other, there's a lot of media people and a lot of people, a lot of sports stars and a lot of other people talking about how they might fare against Ronda Rousey. You hear people like Shaq talking about how, I could probably take her, and other people saying the same thing. What do you think, Sherwin? You think you can take Ronda Rousey?
Absolutely not. And if Shaq thinks he can take Ronda Rousey, he needs to watch her YouTube video where she hip tosses like 100 guys that are twice her weight.
There was a really good one.
I mean, it hurts guys.
There was a media guy who called her out, and yeah, she hip tossed him and broke 2 ribs, I believe, just with a regular judo throw. I don't think I could win in a pillow fight against her, so I'm not even going to try. However, I
want to get in a pillow fight with her. I'll tell you what.
I'll leave that where it was. But I believe I watched that 34 seconds over and over again. I believe I've seen a few holes in her game. Number 1, I believe she's weak against swords, and number 2, weak against bazookas. And so I believe, and I may need to have one in either hand. If I could bring a sword and a bazooka in there, depending on how fast she could get to me, I might have a fighting chance. I don't know. Vegas would probably go either way.
Yeah, that would probably be a 1-to-1 push at Vegas. You with a bazooka and Ronda Rousey butt naked.
Yeah. And I might be distracted. Who knows? All right, that's enough of that. Pocono.
Pocono. All right, so we're going to get away from the train wreck that was that conversation and me getting distracted by Ronda Rousey being beautiful and tough as hell. And we're going to talk about how Casey Kane broke loose on like lap 7 and smacked the same pit wall, almost the same area that was hit there in practice by, I forget.
Was it Boyer?
It wasn't Boyer. It doesn't matter. I'm moving on to Kevin Harvick. Blew a motor like on the second lap after that restart.
Yeah, so interestingly, we've talked a bunch before. Me and you are both our favorite drivers, Casey Kane. Last week I picked Kevin Harvick to win. So within the first, 10 laps, everybody that I really cared about in terms of rooting for both in the heart and in the money were both out of the race. So I kind of, I'm not going to say I tuned out, but I certainly, instead of sitting on the edge of my seat, I was laying back at that point. So it was kind of a bummer. I'm not gonna poop on the whole race or anything, but I was a little disappointed at that point.
That is the strongest reaction I've had to my guy wrecking out early that I have ever had. I actually, at that point, turned the race off and started watching golf, and I think the Braves may have been on too. And it took me about a half hour to regroup and turn the race back on. You expect practice performance and historical performance suggested that the 5 car should have had a good shot at getting a top 10, and to just wreck by yourself for no apparent reason other than driving the car much harder than it should be driven. It was pretty frustrating as a fan.
Yeah. It looks like, was it Jeb Burton that hit the wall?
Yeah, it was Jeb. Yeah, I meant to cut in there and say that. It was the 26 Dr. Pepper car that basically had the exact same wreck in practice. So it sounds like the turn 3 was a little bit sketchy. And I don't know if that was the aero package, which wasn't really any different than any other intermediate track. They didn't try anything new. We've been applauding NASCAR for the things they've been trying to figure out, what they can do with the racing and maybe make the appearance of it look better, maybe more exciting for us, the fans. But they didn't really do anything new at Pocono.
And these were 2 different series of cars that hit the wall, right? No, was it both Sprint Cup? Okay, never mind then. Either way, they showed Casey Kane. They showed this slow motion replay of Casey coming off turn 4, and they showed where the tire tracks for Jeb Burton was, and it was uncanny. I mean, he drew right over like he was 10 years old trying to color within the lines or whatever. He went right over the top of the same ones, and I think that was probably the most telling part, especially for these guys doing the commentary and stuff, and the guys watching it, and for me at home, just that there's something going on right there. Obviously, I've never seen anything like that where 2 guys wreck I'm talking about in the exact same pattern coming off of 4 there.
Yeah, it was very uncanny. It was almost like there was something there that caused them both to break loose exactly the same way. I mean, the only thing I can think, the reason why they didn't actually hit the same pit stall is that the technology and the brakes on a Hendrick car is probably better than that Dr. Pepper car, and that's why Jeb hit about 3 stalls away from Casey, actually, where he ended up.
Yeah.
That's probably it.
And then, of course, they were showing that Casey, where he hit on the wall was in a pit stall, and exploded a few helmets that were sitting on the pit wall there. So that was pretty wild. And then, of course, and there was one guy there who was standing there who was in just street clothes that they were talking about on the TV, saying, this guy could have got killed, and that it's the crew chief's responsibility to make sure everybody's safe around that area.
Yeah, well, there was reports that came out mid-race that at least one of those helmets landed 200 feet away from the wall.
Holy mackerel.
So that's something to keep in mind. And I'm not making that up just to drive excitement. That's just what I read. So anyway, yeah, that was nuts. You don't expect a car to hit that hard. If you recall, I think it was 3 years ago at Michigan when Mark Martin had a similar type spin out of turn 4, like I said, at Michigan. And then he catches a gap in the wall and hits the wall perpendicular and damn near saws the car in half. I mean, the wall was in the back seat with Mark Martin.
Ugh.
And that was it was Casey's pit where they hit.
Wow,
there was guys running around. Somebody was injured. It was nuts.
Yeah, what a coincidence, too, that Casey Kane takes over that car eventually or whatever. Or was he driving Hendrick at that time?
That was his first year in that car. Yeah, it was 2012, I want to say.
Okay.
At Michigan. Mark Martin's last year in the 55 Aaron's Toyota, and he spun off turn 4 all by himself, and he went flying down pit road just like we saw these 2 cars do at Pocono, except for he found a gap, and the car got some front-end bite, swung the left side of the car around, and he hit the inside, like where the wall ends.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Flush right in front of the left rear tire.
Right in the spike of that. Yeah. That's nuts. So we ended up at Pocono, like we do sometimes, the way they talk about the strategy at Pocono, we ended up in a fuel mileage race. We've talked about fuel mileage races a little bit on the podcast before. I tend to talk about how I've said it before. I like guys who are gambling, who are out there rolling the dice, and in order for us to even think about that as rolling the dice, we need to see guys fail sometimes, because it's not very fun if it's always they're rolling the dice and they I don't know, the media or at least the commentators talk about how they're really gambling right here with their pit stops and all, and then they make it by a ton, and then they're able to even do burnout laps and drive back to victory lane. So that's a lot of times stuff that doesn't pan out. This time we did see some guys gamble and did lose on that gamble. So saw Kyle Busch lose on the gamble, pretty much fighting the whole way against Joey Logano at the end. Both of them run out of gas, pretty much making each other run out of gas. It's kind of funny that one of them would sort of pull away so the other one has to catch up, but then, they're both trying to save. And what do you know, Matt Kenseth ends up taking the flag out of nowhere with, I guess, a better strategy, which was go get some fuel earlier on, and ended up, I think Jeff Gordon had like a top 5. Matter of fact, all of Hendrick except Casey Kane had top 6. I think Dale Jr. Nobody did? Oh, you can talk. It's okay.
No. I was saying that
he's giving me the thumbs down.
You were right. It sucked.
Oh, yeah. It sucked.
Yeah.
I think Junior or Jimmy got 6th, and somebody else had top 5, and
or
2 of them had top 5.
Like 3rd.
Yeah.
2nd or 3rd.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a fun race at the end. I was glad I was watching.
Yeah.
It was interesting to let them see it play out. There's been a lot of commentary on Twitter and otherwise about how they didn't throw the phantom caution that they've been throwing the last 2 or 3 years, and we actually saw a fuel mileage race. I thought Brad's commentary was pretty interesting, saying that they've become so customary to seeing that late caution that their last pit stop, they are actually pitting 2 or 3 laps earlier than when they could actually make it, counting on the caution. So it was maybe a little bit of a calling bluff by NASCAR.
Yeah.
I wish it would be a lot more fun if they didn't have to call bluffs, because they call their own. In reality, they created the bluff.
Yeah, and
so just let the race run the way it's supposed to run.
Yeah, maybe this is the beginning of them starting to do that. I don't know. I applaud them letting the race run instead of throwing a phantom caution. It's kind of like in the NFL. They say there's holding on every play. So which one are you going to call? I think with every race with 3 laps left, you can find you some debris somewhere. These cars have been bumping and banging. That's the whole point of non-open wheel racing, closed wheel racing, whatever you want to call it, is being able to make these passes, being able to rub it a little bit. Rubbin's Racing sort of deal. You can find something on the track 2.5 miles long that you can throw a caution and have the cameras point over at it and everybody go, oh, okay, well, there's something out there. But, hey, let them race.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'll just throw a dart right now because you brought it up. We need to do a quick bit about IndyCar at Pocono later. But, yeah, I think NASCAR is hunted for anything that could create excitement towards the end of a race. I think they finally may have realized that the impact that those late race cautions and then potentially the green-white checkers that they breed so often, they impact the finishing order of the race so much that why would you run the previous 380 laps or 200 laps or 190 laps or whatever track we're at? If that's how much you're going to impact the end of the race, why not just run the last 20? And every time that they take that to heart, I think it hurts them, and it should.
Yeah,
and I think they're learning from it.
So who was your pick last week? I cannot remember.
All right, give me a second. I'll keep talking. It wasn't Martin Truex. I had some alliteration for his win at the previous race. I actually picked Clint Boyer.
Okay.
I thought he was a good sleeper pick, and with all the stuff going on and as ADD as he is, I was hoping he would be able to block that all out and get her done.
So let's move on to next week then, or this weekend is our road course. For those of you who don't know what we call a road course, who happen to be listening and want to know more about it, we're talking about turning left and right, as they say. So just like the open wheel guys and in other series, we're on a road course, Watkins Glen, out of northern part of New York, and they have, I believe it's 11 turns, count them 11, and so they're going to be running. I think the big thing that people are talking about right now, I don't know if there's rain in the forecast or if they're just making a big deal out of this because there's not a whole lot going on. But, yeah, we can shoot the Kyle Busch double birds at a rain tire start. We've done this in Nationwide before with rain tires, and I mean, it's not fun. People are going around at half speed. So very opinionated on that. You take it over, Sherwin.
Yeah, so I'll just start from the top. Yeah, we're going to Watkins Glen, the Finger Lakes region of New York. It's between Syracuse and Albany.
Albany.
Yeah, Albany, except for they actually call it Albany up there.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
We call it Albany down here, down in South Georgia. But, yeah, we're going to do some Ambiturning, as the Ambiturners call it. We call it NASCAR road course. We're actually running the short course at Watkins Glen, so there's only 7 turns. I'd love to see us run the boot. That would be a lot of fun, I think. But for now, NASCAR thinks that we should only run the short course. It's going to be fun. There's a lot of interesting things that go on with going to Watkins Glen. Watkins Glen is our speedway version of road course, which is so cool about NASCAR. We only run the 2, but they're very different. The Sonoma race course is very slow. It's very much like a short track. And then we go to Watkins Glen, which is really fast. and like a speedway version. So it fits well with what NASCAR does. We want to welcome back Boris Said is going to run in the Joe Gibbs Racing number 54, so that's fun.
I had in my show notes to talk about the ringers, and so it's fun
ringers.
to see the.
And this time, for the first time, and I can't tell you when, there's a ringer showing up in a car that should be a top 10, top 5 car. So Boris Said he's going to have a real chance to win this race if he doesn't act like an idiot like he did a few years ago at Mid-Ohio and wreck Greg Biffle no, that wasn't Biffle. He wrecked Biffle at Watkins Glen. But there was a video I remember sending you. He got out of the car at Mid-Ohio and he just yacked up like a quart of grape Gatorade.
Yeah, and you had a sound effect to go along with it that made that. If I
something like that,
I think I've got that video somewhere, and if I do, I'll try to bring it up and post it on the next podcast because that was one of the best video audio accompaniments that I've ever heard.
That's the best voiceover I've ever done, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up the ringers that we've got one back, and we haven't had many ringers lately. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that we don't really have any start and park teams. We don't have any, or there's a lot of teams that are multi-car teams and stuff. So they've been all trying to get in the top 30 and trying to top 25, etc., and trying to. I guess just trying to race instead of, like I said, these start and park teams that we've had before that'll bring in a ringer every once in a while. So it is good to see Boris Said come. I don't even know how old he is.
Boris is getting on up there. I bet he's probably 45 or older, maybe even 50. Yeah. I think the biggest reason why you don't see the ringers is the way the point system works now, especially in Cup. It's still Xfinity is the same way for the most part. I think what you're seeing now is if you want to be a NASCAR driver, you better learn how to race on a road course.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, Xfinity has 3 of them. Cup has 2. These aren't throwaway races anymore with the way the point system works. So
yeah,
you have to learn how to do it. And these guys, they straight up learned how to do it.
Yeah, and your competitors are all, there's more and more guys that are coming from open wheel, not just dirt track guys, but we have open wheel guys coming over, and more open wheel guys showing interest in NASCAR. That, yeah, we've got people like Dinger, who open wheel guy who won last year.
Right, Dinger grew up kart racing in California, just like Kevin Harvick did. And Jamie McMurray was a kart racer. I think Carl Edwards got his start in kart before he hit the dirt tracks. I mean, you got a lot of these guys that are doing Ambiturners racing at a very young age that learn how to feel car control going both left and right, and that stuff all adds up in the end. Yeah.
So it looks like Boris Said, by the way, is 52.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's up there. Mark Martin's 56, so he's 4 years younger than Mark Martin, but only.
Well, good on the Said head.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know and are listening in, Said head, he's got a pretty large fro for a white guy racing race cars, and it's a pretty sweet fro. And so the Said head coming out there, people wear the big old wigs and all that, rooting for him.
Yeah, that's awesome. I hope there's a big crowd for him this weekend. I hope he doesn't have the same moment he had with Greg Biffle a couple years ago. And now that I got my wits about me, I believe that was a Cup race in maybe 2011 or 2012. And there was a situation where, well, let's just say it. Boris is a big old boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Biffle got mad at him, and Boris was about to dirty whoop his butt. Luckily, there was about 20 other guys standing around, or Greg Biffle might have a little bit different outlook on life.
So it brings us to our picks. Who you got for the I got to imagine you won last time, so I'll make you pick first because I picked Harvick, who had to finish 41st or 42nd with Casey right behind him. So it's
I
on
want to
you.
lead you in on this. I'm going to pick the guy, and then I want you to make your pick, and then I want to talk about the guy.
Okay.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
I'm going to pick Brad Keselowski.
Okay.
He's been fantastic at Watkins Glen since then his Cup career started. So, and he's also racing in the Xfinity race. So anyway, I'm going to pick Brad. You next.
Okay. I actually did more research for this one than I've done for any other one, and I want people to know that so that they don't think that I'm just picking last year's winner, AJ Allmendinger. I did go in there. I did my research. I've looked at speed charts. I've looked at history and all the rest of it. I really think he has a big chance of repeating what he did last year, just with his background, with who he is, what he's able to do, and the motivation that he has right now to get into that chase.
You're 100% correct. AJ is he's in a good car now. We didn't used to be able to say that. His car's good. That's a good car. They're getting a lot of help from Richard Childress. That was a great alliance that the Deschectors and Brad Doherty pulled off to be able to align that way. AJ's really good at Watkins Glen.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to battle Marcus Ambrose this year.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, all these things point to the right stuff. He's actually really close. What are they, 19th in points? I mean, he's running good.
Yeah, exactly. You
he's
get that win,
he's
you're
knocking on the door. He's not a backmarker car. He's not this 32nd place car that needs to win a race to luck his way in. Like that, if they win this race, it's legitimate.
Yeah, for sure.
And so what I wanted to swing back to and talk about Brad was Brad wrote a really insightful blog about his new fatherdom and the fact that in the very early weeks after the birth of his child, they had some serious health issues, and the child was not breathing well. They took it to a hospital in Charlotte, and there was a diagnosis that they either didn't agree with or didn't like or weren't sure about. But as it turns out, Penske Corporation has a relationship with St. Jude up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they were able to get their child up to the facility up there and get a diagnosis and get a surgery. What it was apparently there's some sort of early childhood or infant deal where the muscles in the neck don't form correctly and actually causes the windpipe to collapse and makes breathing a real challenge. And this was going on in June and in early June, and they get this thing corrected, they get their child healthy, and then Brad goes and wins Kentucky, and his girlfriend Paige White is in victory lane, with their newborn, and it was like it was a big deal. It was a very touching blog that he wrote. It really drove emotion for me, even though I'm not a father. I don't really aspire to be one, as I've mentioned in the past. But man, it doesn't matter. It still drives emotion.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it's like to try to perform as a professional when you don't even know if your child's going to live through the week?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I had read the headlines for that, but hadn't gone any further into it. And I'm glad you brought it up. So you started this last week, our dark horse picks. I'll start this time, and I actually hate to call this a dark horse pick, but I'm going with Tony Stewart, and the reason is that he's had so much trouble this year, and that's why I'm kind of calling him a dark horse. But in the last few races, he's shown a bit of life. I think it is a time right now where he can come back and make some waves. So my dark horse pick, not anything I'm going to put money on right now because I still think he's very much a coin flip race to race. But I'll say Tony Stewart.
He was fast at Indy, and that's usually an indication that the cars are getting better.
Yep. I don't think it's a car with him a lot of times, though. Especially right now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like he's coming back around.
I think he is too. He's having more fun for sure. As I forwarded on from his Twitter, Dale Jr. has won Twitter since he started it. Tony just got on about 6 months ago, and he's a dark horse. He's quietly hilarious and quietly inappropriate. So, as far as my dark horse pick goes,
Thinking.
I don't know if you took mine. I actually thought about this for a while, and I had one, and then I let it go. And then I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to pick for my dark horse. I'm going to pick the same guy I picked to win last week. I'm actually going to go Clint Boyer.
Okay.
With the dark horse, because I think whatever's wrong with Michael Waltrip Racing might be neutralized by left and right turns. And I'm ready for that guy to win, man. He's such a fun guy.
Yeah.
Like you said, when hell parties, they raise Clint Boyer.
And that's what you want. You want to see the after party pictures because he'll tweet them.
Right. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, there is a couple things I want to sneak in at the end. I don't know if you're ready to be done. With this
go
thing
for
or
it.
Not. But what I was going to say is my general feeling about NASCAR is not as strong as it's been. I've been a big proponent of NASCAR. I've consumed as much information as I possibly could over the last 3 or 4 years. I actually stopped recording the daily shows. I don't miss them. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been a part of my life that I miss now. And I actually agreed to go see a movie on Sunday right in the middle of the Cup race.
Oh,
with,
man.
2 friends of ours we've met. I'm going with Courtney and Claire to see Trainwreck.
Ah, okay.
Which I think will be hilarious.
Well, one thing about Watkins Glen is, as we've known in the last few years, it's like a 90-minute race. This thing is over in no time.
That's true.
It's one.
And you know what? We talked about this at the very beginning. You led with this. We haven't talked about rain tires and how much that sucks.
Well, we're closing in on our normal time frame here, and I wonder if we ought to leave that for next time if we have to talk about it.
Okay. We'll just really quickly suffice to say NASCAR thought they hit a home run last year when they had the rain race on rain tires at Road of America in Wisconsin, because it actually went dry and they had an interesting finish with Brendan Gaughan beating Chase Elliott. But if you watch those 2 races at Montreal in the dead, pouring butt rain, they sucked.
Oh, yeah. No, I can't agree with you more on that. Just less racing in the rain. Like I just said, it's an hour-and-a-half race, so we should be able to find a time frame somewhere in there. Let's do that, or delay it to Monday or something.
I'll skip work.
Yeah. Well, let's close this thing out,
Actually,
man.
I'll take my work laptop downstairs and watch on TV. The benefit of working from home.
Yeah. And I work from home on Mondays, so yeah, perfect. So closing it out, I think for the rest of the next 4 weeks, best way to close this thing out is with our countdown. We've got 22 days from today until Bristol, 29 days until Darlington.
And 28 days until Georgia Tech football.
That's true, too. So the football kickoff really
Obviously,
looking –
that's going to narrow the fan window down, so I don't want to make that the first and foremost. But, yeah, 22 days until Bristol.
And 29
not even. Actually, 20
Darlington.
That Friday is 21 days.
Something like that. Well, it's Thursday right now, so
We'll get up nice and early on that.
however you count it.
We'll get to Asheville hopefully by about 12:30, 1 o'clock. Hit one of those cool breweries.
Absolutely.
Buy some of their local beers. They put it in cans. Head over the mountain.
That's right.
Watch some racing at the Coliseum.
Man, I'm so looking forward to it. And a week after that, we're at Old School City with Darlington. So So let's bring it out, man. This is the Pregame Engineer Tailgate Mayor podcast. You can find us on Twitter at PETM Podcast. And follow us. Sherwin's posting stuff all the time. I am Tailgate Mayor. It's at Tailgate Mayor. And Sherwin.
Yeah, I'm Pregame Engineer at Pregame ENG.
And we will talk to
and
y'all.
I'm also operating the PETM podcast handle at Twitter as well. And shout out to Blue Apron. I had a delicious lamb burger tonight. Yummy.
Awesome. So we will talk to y'all next week after Watkins Glen. And until then,
Off we go. Thumbs up.